Especifismo in Brazil, an interview with the Anarchist Federation of Rio de Janeiro, FARJ. In this interview, realized between August and October 2010, the Anarchist Federation of Rio de Janeiro, FARJ, talks about its understanding of concepts such as especifismo, organizational dualism, social insertion, and the role of an anarchist political organization in relation to the social movements and the class struggle. For those readers not familiar with the concept of organizational dualism, could you please explain why the need to build an anarchist political organization in Rio de Janeiro? What kind of process did you have to go through to arrive at this conclusion and to form the FARJ? FARJ. The term organizational dualism, as it is used in English, serves to explain the conception of organization that we promote, or what has classically been called the discussion between party and mass movement. In short, our Especifista tradition has its roots in Bakunin, Malatesta, Dielo Truda, Federação Anarquista Uruguaya, and other militant organizations that have defended this differentiation between levels of organization. That is, a broad level that we call the social level, and is composed of popular movements, and that which we call the political level, composed of anarchist militants that are grouped around a defined political and ideological basis. This model is based on a few positions: that popular movements cannot be confined to a defined ideological camp, and, in this respect, we differentiate ourselves from the anarcho-syndicalists, for example, because they should organize themselves around needs, land, shelter, jobs, etc., grouping together large sectors of the people. This is the social level, or the mass movement, as it has been called historically. The model also contends that, to work in movements, it is not enough to be dissolved or instead in them, even while recognizing us as anarchists. It is necessary that we be organized, constituting a significant social force that will facilitate in the promotion of our program and also in defense against attacks from adversaries that have other programs. However, one must bear in mind that we do not promote that you participate in one or other level. Anarchists are also workers and are part of this broad group that we call the exploited classes, and therefore they organize themselves as a class in the social movements. Even so, as this level of organization has its limitations, the anarchists also organize themselves on the political level, as anarchists, as a way to articulate their work and ideas. What is called the specific anarchist organization is nothing new in the anarchist movement. Its origins are in the militancy of Bakunin himself, within the First International, with the formation of the Alliance of Socialist Democracy in 1868. Malatesta, developing Bakunin's thesis of active minority, also thought of something similar. As in the same way did the exiled Russians of Dielo Truda and the FAO, amongst so many others. The specific grouping of anti-authoritarian revolutionaries is based on common positions on the horizon, objectives, strategies, and tactics. That is, the specific anarchist organization is not a recent invention, but has its trajectory in the consolidation of anarchism itself as a revolutionary tool, tracing itself to the actions of Bakunin. In the historical development of the anarchist movement, this position was neglected in diverse countries, in detriment to a position that said that syndicalism, that accumulated the set of social movements, was enough. Not for us. We believe that the duty of the specific anarchist organization, what Malatesta called the anarchist party, is to articulate the force of the anarchists around a common proposal and to stimulate the social movements that they advance more and more beyond their demands, being able to forge the basis of a revolutionary transformation. It is important to emphasize that organizational dualism does not presuppose a relation of subordination or hierarchy between the two instances mentioned. In the understanding of anarchism, the specific anarchist organization and the social movements are complementary. The relation of the specific anarchist organization presupposes ethical and horizontal relations that imply not to have relations of hierarchy or domination over the instances that participate. In Rio de Janeiro, the organized anarchists tried to found specific anarchist organizations twice, but repression postponed their project. These comrades felt intuitively that the reflux of revolutionary syndicalism could also condemn anarchism itself. And this was exactly what happened. Syndicalism was not enough, and with the emptying of revolutionary syndicalism, anarchism entered into crisis. Already in the 1930s. In the decades of 1940 and 1950, the comrades from Rio de Janeiro and also from Sao Paulo founded their specific organizations, but were completely isolated from the social movements and organized themselves to reverse this picture. In the decade of 1960, the military coup and the conditions of the anarchist movement had delayed the project of a specific anarchist organization in Rio de Janeiro. With the movement completely smashed by the years of the dictatorship, the decades of 1980 and 90 were decades of agglutination of old and new militants, done mainly by the tireless work and patience of Ideal Perez. It was the time not only to resume old debates, but also the important experiences of struggle that the anarchists had undertaken, even if they were not necessarily grouped around a common strategy. Occupations, popular education groups, presence in trade unions, etc. At the beginning of 2001, we comprehended that it was the moment to take a qualitative jump, to leave the model of cultural centers around which we had been organizing since the 1980s, and to form a political organization more adequate for working with social movements. This was becoming more and more evident. It was the path that we would have to follow. We had some experience with social work, and the decision that anarchism must function to impel popular struggles. It became evident that we would have to search for something more organized, with more cohesion, at least an instrument that would allow us to deepen our work in the way that was shown necessary. It was then that diverse militants from the anarchist movement in Rio de Janeiro came together with the intention of discussing the proposal to found an organization. They already had a certain experience in social militancy, but lacked having discussed what our organizational model would be. One of the groups withdrew from the process and resolved to have their own discussions separately. Later, they founded the Insurrectionist Anarchist Federation, which they later called UNIPA. The group that remained and continued with the discussions constituted the FARJ in 2003. It is important to highlight that the FARJ was a consequence of an accumulation of at least one decade before, with the presence of anarchists in diverse social movements in the state of Rio de Janeiro.